Ethan Carter I didn't know, but he knew who I was. When the police won't help you and the priests don't believe you, you call on Paul Prospero. You call on me. If you're a kid like Ethan, you're right. Plenty do. Ethan's letter started out just like any other fan mail. But soon there were mentions of things no little boy should know about. There are places that exist that very few people can see. Ethan could have drawn a map. I hadn't entered Red Creek Valley yet, but already I could feel its darkness reaching out for me. Finding Ethan Carter wasn't going to be as easy as knocking on his door. I was too late for that. To find Ethan, I had to figure out what this place was trying to hide from me.
Hi, this is Jeremy.
And this is Becky. We're kind of epic.
Today we're talking about The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. You may be asking yourself, why are you guys talking about a game that came out in 2014, now with it now being 2016? And there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, this game, they did a really good job of changing over into VR. Porting over. So they gave you two options. This one we're looking at right now is the original mode?
The normal mode.
The normal
they call
mode,
it.
which I could not play it this way.
Mm-hmm.
It made me really sick really quickly. So, but I think Jeremy has a couple things he wanted to say about this mode.
Yeah, it's very similar to the other game we played.
Albino Lullaby.
Albino Lullaby, thank you.
Which I also couldn't play in VR.
Yep. Where you use the controller to move forward and back. As you can see here on the screen, you kind of slide along like a normal game on a monitor that you would play.
Yeah, and even this makes me a little nauseous.
Just watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not comfortable to play it this way.
Yeah.
At least for us. Some people, I think, can probably handle that. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, it makes both of us feel pretty icky. To put it mildly.
Yeah, that is mild. But they did give you multiple options.
Yeah, and I think before we get into that, I do want to mention that this didn't make me as nauseous as Albino Lullaby, and I think it's because it's in an open environment, outdoors, maybe. And so it wasn't as claustrophobic. So the whole room wasn't moving around me, so I had some things to focus on to lock on that weren't moving as fast. Maybe I don't know. I've also been able to do some like the racing games and stuff.
Those
don't bother me. So I think it's partly that, or maybe I'm just getting my VR legs.
You probably don't have the inner ear problems I must obviously have, because I can't handle anything where I'm seeing stuff that is moving differently than I feel like I'm moving.
Right.
I have a really hard time with that.
Yeah. And, it still is uncomfortable for me. And it just wasn't as bad as the other games. So, but that's basically how this normal mode works. Now what we're going to do is switch over to what they call their comfort mode, which is their complete redesign of how the game works for VR. So here we have the comfort mode now going. And as you can see, it's quite different. Basically, you look at, there's arrows that they've added all over the world. And then you look at the arrows and it highlights it, and then you press the button on the controller and it takes you over to that section or to that area.
And this was so much easier for me. I was able to play this for a really long time without getting even a little bit nauseous. This honestly is VR done right. Changing a game that was a point-and-click adventure to VR done the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a couple of minor bitches I have about it, but for the most part, it was really done very well because I didn't get sick.
Right.
And usually with these type of games where it's a game that was originally a point-and-click adventure or any kind of game that was for a PC and not made for VR, that they changed to a VR game, I've gotten sick every time. But this one, when they added the arrows where you choose your direction and then you kind of teleport to that direction, so much easier on me.
Yeah, and you can actually do this sitting down, standing up, room scale, because they do, they are tracking, tracking your movements. So you can, standing here in this spot, you can actually walk around in that area. And, then when you're ready to move to the next area, you just focus on the arrow, hit the button, and it takes you into the next area. So it does make a huge difference and makes it so much easier.
Oh, God, so much easier.
So
much easier.
Yeah.
I wish Albino Lullaby had done it this way, because I really loved that game and I would have loved to play it in VR, but I couldn't. This game is super interesting, and it has a really interesting story. There's a couple things like they don't explain really how everything works. Like, you don't get a good tutorial of how you make things happen. So you kind of have to figure that out as you go. So I missed a bunch of stuff the first time I went through.
Yeah, and this video is actually, I think, the third time we started it, because I started it in normal mode. And then Becky tried it in normal mode and was like, nope, can't do that. So we started over in comfort mode. Actually, maybe you started it in comfort mode, and I just just deleted and stopped because you can't, once you start the game, you can't start it in the different mode, or you can't change it to a different mode.
So you have to start over.
So you have to start over, which sucks, but, hey, not a big deal. So then I wanted to get some good footage for it, so I started again. To get us up to the point again where we were, and actually found some more stuff that we had totally missed in the beginning. And I was like, oh, well, now it makes so much more sense. And that was because they don't really explain the game mechanics too well. Like Becky was kind of saying there is you can, when you find a clue and you have to go find something, like we were looking at the train, you have to find the crank. And it says crank, 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 and there's text floating everywhere. And it's just like, okay, well, that's nice. Thanks. I need to find the crank. But what you don't realize is you have to look around until you find where it focuses in, and then you click the button, and then it shows you a little preview of where that crank is actually located.
Yeah, and it does say that this is a story game that doesn't hold your hand, which is cool, but I feel like the game mechanics should have been explained so that you understood what you had to do. Right. And then, of course, don't hold your hand. Yeah. Because exploring is fun. Yeah. I love that part of these types of games. But the mechanics isn't, I think, an important thing to explain. Sure. And they don't do that. But once you understand the mechanics, this game is hella pretty. Yeah. It's really interesting. And really, they did the VR conversion so well. Yeah. That all of those things can be forgiven. Because the VR conversion is just so amazingly well done. And quite honestly, so they're actually charging for the VR version of it. It's like a DLC, downloadable content. And I think it's like something like $10 even. It's not, I can't remember exactly the price, but it wasn't expensive, but it was kind of odd that, like, oh, VR support, but now I understand why. Yeah, because they worked hard on it. They worked really hard. They had to place all of those arrows in the world, which is like thousands of them. So it took them a lot of work and a lot of time to do it. So it absolutely makes sense that they charge for it. Yeah. And it's just so well done. I really think that this is this should be the beginning standard for converting a PC game to VR. Is make it so that you don't have like that railroad car feeling and that nausea-inducing movement. Now there are some buggy things like. When you do pick an arrow to go to, it will sometimes flip you around. So I have been stuck in loops where I'm going back and forth, and I am totally flipping lost because I have no idea where I am. And that's because it like switches you back to a different direction. It doesn't leave you in the direction you're facing. Right. And so, and even once you understand that that is what is happening, it still makes you get lost a little bit. So
Right.
it still needs some work, but they really made a big effort to try and make sure that this wouldn't make people sick and that they can make it workable. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. And, maybe it would be easier once we start getting back into the buildings and stuff. It'll be a little more obvious. But out in the woods,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, there's trees. Wait.
Yeah, I got lost so many times.
Tree?
I was going back and forth and back and forth. And I felt like I was just going in circles because everything looks the same. It is still kind of bad in buildings.
Yeah.
In the church, I was
you were doing the
I was
comfort in there.
looping
That's
in circles
you
for a
were.
while
Yeah.
inside that building because I just couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
Because it flips you around. It does not keep you in the same
And it's not always that you're like
position.
facing forward and then you're facing backwards when you get to the next room. Sometimes you're facing to the right or to the left. And so you just totally lose your orientation and it's so confusing.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit difficult to navigate where you are and where you came from. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it is still the best conversion that I've come across yet.
Yeah.
So they need some hella big props for doing such a good job at converting this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the game is gorgeous. Even in VR, I mean, we're running NVIDIA GTX 970, which is the minimum spec for VR, so we can't run it at full graphics settings. It still looks really great. Mm-hmm. They actually, at one point, I think it was maybe 2015, they upgraded the game engine from Unreal 3 to Unreal 4 and did a sort of graphics overhaul, and they released that for free. So it was that was really cool. So we're getting improved graphics from that. We're also, it still looks really good, like I said, even in VR.
Mm-hmm. It is really pretty, and the acting is excellent. This is really good voice acting. Mm-hmm. I really, really enjoy this game, and I honestly, this should be the beginning standard for converting a PC game to VR. It needs improvement,
sure,
but this really was so far the best conversion I've come across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to touch on one last thing before we go, something maybe we should have started with was what the game is actually about.
Well, it's still a little weird. So.
It is weird, but it's basically like a detective game. Mm-hmm. You're kind of a detective who's trying to find this kid. That's Ethan down there. Ethan Carter, and you're trying to figure out, he sent you a letter saying, hey, something crazy weird's going on and I need help. And this guy, I guess, is some sort of like psychic or has some special abilities where he can, deduce maybe supernatural things or figure out supernatural things. And so that's why he's taken this on to try to find this kid, because it is some weird supernatural thing that's going on.
Yeah, it seems like he can get glimpses of things that happen. Like he can get feelings about what was going on, and gives you clues of where to go next.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Is you're finding clues and then kind of trying to deduce what's happened in this area. Mm-hmm. And so right now, we're trying to figure out the sequence of events that took place to lead to this body that you found that has no legs. And you're like, what is going on? So it's really neat gameplay. I really like the way they've done it, where you kind of have to find all the clues before you can find this whole scene that you put together. And then once you put the scene together, then it gives you, kind of the next steps to go on and keep going. So yeah, once you figure out the game mechanics,
yeah, and it's and it is definitely a creepy cool storyline,
right?
Which is really fun. I love creepy cool. So
yeah, in case you haven't figured that out yet, with some of the games we've reviewed already.
I am definitely a fan of the horror genre, but not survivor horror as much.
Right.
I enjoy the scary story.
You don't like the blood and guts so much.
Yeah, I don't like the blood and guts so much, but I really love a creepy story.
Mm-hmm. And this one, it definitely hits those chords. So.
Yeah.
definitely worth checking out. If you already have the game, definitely worth getting the VR
Agreed.
DLC for it. If you do have the Vive, or I think it has Oculus support as well. So definitely check it out.
And have you tried the Vanishing of Ethan Carter? What do you think?
If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button.
Also, let us know if there's a title you would like to see us review in the comments.
And we will see you on the next one.
Bye!